to the heart of what truly matters, our families. Healthy families make healthy societies. I'm Randy.
And I'm Leslie. We're diving deep into the powerful insights of Dr. Randy's groundbreaking book, The Family Legacy: Shaping Culture from the Inside Out.
Hear inspiring stories and strategies to transform your family. We'll explore topics like communication, forgiveness, healing, parenting, marriage. We'll cover it all.
We'll have provoking conversations with experts, coaches, and real-life families who are benefiting from intentional family building.
This podcast isn't just about theories, it's about tools that you can implement today.
We all come from families, so this podcast is for you.
Join us on this incredible family journey. Subscribe now as we learn to do family as God designed.
Transforming families one episode at a time. Remember, whoever wins the family wins the culture in the end. Let's go.
Hi, welcome back to Transforming Families with Randy and Leslie. I'm Randy.
I'm Leslie.
And here we go. I want you to introduce our guest today. We're excited.
Yeah, we are excited. We've had Joel Warneking here before, but this time he is here with his wife, Rachel. So Joel and Rachel Warneking, they've been married for 12 years. They have 3 beautiful daughters and currently serve as executive directors of 423 Communities International. They seek to bring hope, healing, and restoration to those affected by problematic sexual behaviors. Joel and Rachel get to work in the ministry of restoring individuals and families back into healthy relationships with God and others through building intentional recovery communities all across the country for men, women, and youth. So welcome, Joel and Rachel. Yay.
It is so good to be back here, with everything. You always try to bring your better half. And so thank you for bringing me back so you can see the best parts of ourselves. And I'm excited to introduce you to Rachel and have her be with us today.
Hi, Rachel.
Yes, hi, guys. I got to listen to the podcast that Joel was on this morning. And so it just was such a wonderful conversation. So I'm excited to extend just kind of with our story and then what I offer in the ministry, kind of speak more on that. So thanks for having us.
Wonderful. Well, let's get started right away. We always start with this. This is so important. And of course, this will air several weeks from now, likely. So tell us about your family.
Yes. Joel mentioned last time, but he talked from his perspective as a girl dad. But we have 3 girls. They're about to all change ages. And so now they want me to say their next age. So just our youngest just turned 3, Nora Lee. She's the baby. And she knows it. And we have Mercy Rose. She's about to turn 6. And Amia Joy, who is about to turn 8. So everyone's home for the summer right now, and we are getting through it. There's a lot of emotions in our house currently.
Wait till they're teenagers.
Oh, man. I can only imagine. I'm right there with them, though. I've got all of the feelings. And so it's group therapy work every day. It's good.
Oh, my goodness. We have one of our daughters has 6 children, and she calls the 3 age, she calls them 3-nagers.
Yes, I feel that very much. Yes.
Welcome to your 3rd 3-nager.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
Well, let's jump in. It's no mystery. I think it's just beautiful how God takes our brokenness and our weakness and he heals it and restores it in us and restores us. And then he uses us to help others. And I heard a leader last weekend, our pastor was preaching, and he said, I trust broken and healed leaders. Yes. I really like that. And it really resonates with me. And that, in part, that's your story. So tell us again, just for those who aren't familiar, tell us about your story a little bit. What brings you here to this point of helping others get free and healed from things that are dogging them?
Yeah, definitely. I think last time I was with y'all, I shared just more about my personal story through addiction and, at a very young age, about 8 years old, kind of coming across pornography and how that shaped kind of the addictive path for me moving forward. And so today I'll focus just a little bit more on how that really affected stepping into a relationship, really, the covenant relationship with my spouse, and how truly those conflicts that we had in our early marriage, and even the conflicts we have to this day, were really just shaped at such a young age in my own story.
Mhm.
And so, kind of going back to that moment, growing up in a family that was split by divorce, around the same time of finding pornography at year 8, was just a way for me to manage those difficult and complex emotions. The only way that I really knew how to deal with difficulty in life at 8 years old was to medicate and to disconnect from pain with the novelty and the discovery of pornography. I think for parents, we need to understand that when we have young children, and when we are young children, right, they don't have the ability to regulate and process through complex emotion. And
Mm.
a lot of times, children are left to their own devices to figure out how to deal with the complexities of life. And this is why parents learning how to engage their children in those complex, difficult topics and conversations, and truly give them an example of how they should be reacting and how they should be responding, so
Mhm.
that at 8 years old, when you find pornography, or when you're wrestling with and making space for the conversations around a family separation, that 8-year-old has an ability to move forward through those complex and difficult situations, in a way that can bring life, not just
Yeah.
pain and disconnection and disintegration for the rest of their life. So for me at 8 years old, just coming across this explicit material, there was this kind of crippling shame, and really this separation from that internal sense of self-worth and an identity that I knew that I was supposed to have. Right at 8 years old, I knew that what I was doing was wrong. What I was interested in was not God honoring. I grew up in the church, and so at 8, 9 years old, I had this identification that I was a bad kid.
Mm.
Continued to compound inside of my story and grew more complex as I went through middle school and high school, into college and Bible school, and then into marriage. And I think when you're dating and you're in engagement, all you want in the world, right, is to truly be the best person that your future wife deserves to have. And typically in those moments of dating and engagement, we are the best versions of ourselves that we can muster up, as we get wrapped up in this love story. And sometimes we can even forget or suppress that there are some of those deficits inside of our ability to be healthy inside of relationship. And so we do a lot of premarital counseling. And one of the things that we focus on so much is how do we engage in those deficit areas of our story, those difficult parts that maybe have never been discovered or talked about, from 8 years old, and give a couple healthy expectation, understanding of what it looks like to move through a relationship through those difficult portions of marriage. And
Yeah.
so for us, since I didn't have any of that process figured out, this affected our marriage in the early days of our relationship. It was directly correlated to my inability to address that shame and all of the protective measures that I put around myself to keep
Mhm.
my secrets hidden, the isolation that I had built from 8 years old to 23 when we got married. I had just had these compounded secrets over a decade plus, to keep isolated and to keep safe. And so it became very difficult for me to truly engage in honesty and connection, even about simple things about my workout patterns or my physical health. I had to keep everything secret. Even from the simple questions of, hey, I asked you to change the laundry over while I was at the grocery store. Why didn't you do that? Right. Well, because I was using that opportunity to look at pornography. To the constant vigilance against her finding my online activity from my phone or computer. Just this inability to truly connect intimately was so severely diminished. For me, one of the most significant memories of how this played out was a fight that we had gotten into, something about that was so small and silly that I can't remember what we were fighting about.
The cleaning fight.
We
It was
called it the
always the
cleaning
cleaning
fight. It was
fight.
always a cleaning fight.
It's got
So
a name.
that name. That fight has a name, and it's our crazy cycle, and it triggers a lot of our past woundings and hurts. Um, but these fights always just escalated from the small, silly thing into a complete blow-up fight. It was because of my inability to engage in connection and intimacy. So when things would become heated in relationship, my literal physical body response to this type of conflict was to shut off. Right? I think most everyone that's listening is probably familiar with the fight, flight, or freeze process of our nervous system. It's widely understood that, hey, someone kicks down the door, your body's going to respond and dive into that space. This is just simply our body's way of protecting from potential pain. And pornography for me had become that source, that medicating source that I used to disengage from discomfort. And so my body was literally trained from the age of 8 to run away from difficulty and pain and to isolate and medicate towards feeling okay. What I didn't know is that this window of tolerance, right, from 8 years old to 23 had become so thin that inside of relationship with Rachel, that when we would get into a fight of any kind, when we would try to process through emotional pain, balance the budget, discuss the future, fight over who does the dishes, like anything, right? Any small conflict, everything that was inside of me just wanted to shut down and remove myself from relationship. And so that was kind of how my pornography addiction truly presented itself inside of relationship. And what that left us with was just a confused, frustrated wife who was trying to put the pieces together of why her husband was so disconnected, a husband who was terrified of having my shame exposed, of being shown as a fraud, and still stuck in the past, really as an 8-year-old, unable to process through the pain of my story and connect in any significant level. And that was really just kind of the framework for the first few
Wow.
years of our marriage.
So thank you. Rachel, then you're on the other side of this. What was this like for you?
Yeah, I was so confused those first 2 years before our very public disclosure happened. So Joel had, confessed to me in our engagement season of, hey, I've struggled with this in the past and it's no longer an issue anymore. And, in my mind, this is, 13 years ago. I had never heard anyone in church talk about pornography. It was just not something that people were publicly talking about. And so I think my just innocence or desire for it to just be fine, I was like, well, once we're married and we're intimate, this will no longer be a problem anymore. And, so I entered marriage. We kind of had a whirlwind romance. We met and got married and moved to Texas within a year of meeting each other. And so we had such a beautiful love story engagement season. Even, newlywed life was like just this adventure. And then we move in our apartment and I'm like, something is not right, but I didn't know how to identify it. And so like Joel said, right, we're having, these normal interactions that, anyone in their right mind, who's not trying to hide something would be able to get through those moments without so much conflict or confusion, or it would just go better. And I was like, we cannot do this. And so it was 2 years, a little after 2 years in our marriage when Joel came back to me and said, hey, this problem is still continuing. And at that moment, I just, said basically, well, if you love me, you love God, you'll stop. And, we took away the remotes and, took away access to internet.
Outside in behavior modification.
Yes. Basically, it went from Joel hiding to me hiding with him. And I had a couple experiences within that church context, right? I reached out to someone kind of early in our marriage and said, something didn't feel right. And she went and told the elders and the church. And so I very quickly picked up, oh, if you're in public ministry, your job is also to hide all the conflict. And so that did not help the process, right? I think ideally, if that potentially wouldn't have happened, maybe I could have come forward and really like sounded the alarm for help. But it was just one of those, I was in the position where, yeah, there's a platform that you're on and it's a fall down. Sorry. And so I didn't want Joel to experience that. I didn't want to experience it for myself either, right? I had the pride and a reputation to protect. And so it felt very isolating, very shameful. I did not know where to go. And so when our story, publicly came out of Joel's struggle, that was kind of for me, the heartache, right? It was a heartbreaking moment, but also this moment of, oh my goodness, finally we can get help and we can be known in this, and maybe we'll actually find support because we don't have to pretend anymore. Because those first 2 years of kind of being like, I cannot identify what is going on here, those were some of the hardest years of my life.
Yeah,
Wow.
as you're talking, it's so important to say that, we're talking about pornography specifically, but at any addiction, whether it's shopping or gambling or drinking or drugging or, pick your addiction, it's birthed out of this place of not having a need met, and out of confusion, and a lie sets in, and we unconsciously make agreement with of that lie in our heart that it's not safe. And then all the things that you talked about, Joel, the shame setting in and that addictive cycle. But and I love, and you guys are going to talk more about what you do and when we come back from break, about getting into what's behind the addiction, because the addiction is just the fruit of the wounding underneath. Yeah.
30 seconds before we go to break. This is just totally reminiscent of something that Leslie teaches called the anatomy of dissent. Just real quick, walk through that anatomy of dissent. Like in the garden, Adam and Eve, they sinned, right? And what do?
Yeah, they got confused in the moment, firstly. So the anatomy of dissent starts with a lie. And then from the lie comes the confusion. And when we get in a state of confusion, then we fall short. We sin. We miss the mark. And then once we miss the mark, this is just exactly what Adam and Eve did in the garden. They covered themselves, they hid, and then they blamed. And so this is that downward spiral of the anatomy of dissent. So when we can recognize that we're in a state of confusion where things don't make sense, and we've got enough self-awareness, emotional intelligence to go, wait a minute, I feel off-centered here. Before we go down into the missing the mark and the sin, it's to go back and discover the lie. Because there's a lie there every time, and it's a lie about our identity. That's the lie. That's the lie in the garden, right?
Well, enough of that. Let's go to break, and when we come back, we want to hear just about really something that's not talked about a lot. Really, the women that struggle with pornography and the effect on their husbands, and then we want to hear really your solutions, what God has given you to help heal and restore people. So we'll be right back after this.
Feeling disconnected from your spouse or children? Do you want to create a home filled with love, joy, and purpose? In this fast-paced, crazy world, it's easy to lose sight of what truly matters: your family. The Family School is here to guide you on this incredible journey based on Dr. Randall Bixby's best-selling book, The Family Legacy: Shaping Culture from the Inside Out.
The Family School provided us with the tools and strategies to build a healthy family culture. It's amazing to experience the transformation.
The Family School is a game changer. Our communication has improved, along with our ability to forgive and stay connected. We now have a blueprint to raise our son and teach him how to lead his own family one day.
The support and community at the Family School are incredible. We're not alone in this journey.
Family School has impacted our family relationally by transforming how we interact with each other, improving our communication skills to create a safe environment for everyone to be open and fully themselves.
At the Family School, you'll discover biblical strategies, practical tools, and a supportive community that will empower your family to thrive.
Enroll in the Family School today and embark on a life-changing adventure. Through interactive classes, personalized coaching, and transformative resources, you'll learn practical techniques to heal, grow, and thrive as you build your family in God's design. Visit our website at www.thefamilyreformationproject.com. Start shaping your family's legacy now.
Join the Family School today. Learn to do family by design. Welcome back, Transforming Families. We're here with Joel and Rachel Warneking and 423 Communities. And let's just jump right in, right where we left off. So talk to us, Rachel, about what you do in the ministry there, and share with us what's going on with women in pornography these days.
Yes. So I thank you guys so much for just letting us share our story, because I feel like when I took over this ministry, I kept on hearing the same story with our intake process. And so I think there's just so much power in testimony, right? That people can hear our processing and identify their lived experience as well. So I run our betrayal trauma groups. They're 8-week groups. And really, when I went through everything, man, the enemy just convinced me I was the only one that ever gone through this before. And that was kind of my experience too. No other women in the church came to me, even though it was a very public story of what happened. And I really, man, that confirmed in me of like, oh man, I'm the only one. And so doing the work of healing, the Lord just laid it on my heart to kind of create a betrayal trauma 101 group of, okay, this is happening inside the household, right? And it's very confusing a lot of times just as a betrayed spouse, because it doesn't quite feel like it's your story to share, but it really impacts you, right? We always say this isn't a marriage problem, but it's a problem that affects the marriage, right? And so if it affects everyone in the household, what do we do for that? And so my groups specifically, we provide that space to process through what's going on, how it's impacting you as a person, as a spouse. But we also give tools to resources that you can employ in your journey, right? Because we know cognitively, like healing for the addict, that's a 3 to 5 year process, and very similar for the wife too. It's not an overnight journey of like, okay, we can just pick up the marriage that we once had, right? No, you need to rebuild a whole new marriage. And as an individual too, there's a lot of healing that has to happen. Oftentimes we see women come into this too. Everyone has a different response to it. Some are very hyper vigilant. Some are dissociating. There's high rates of PTSD. So everyone is impacted very differently. But when we come together and we share these stories, you see women on the Zoom call or in person, yes, like shaking their head. Yes, I've experienced that. And now I don't feel so alone in it. And oftentimes too, just to go along with the addict side, right? A lot of times women in their marriages will, come to us for the betrayal trauma work that we offer. Maybe their spouse is in 423 men. But uncovering the work of the betrayal side, they also realize that they're also walking with some sexual brokenness that they've never really worked through before, whether that happened, before the marriage, whether that's currently happening. And we're really trying to create a culture where you have to work on stewarding your sexuality, right? It's not something that you don't address. And I think a lot of women, especially in the church, are like, oh, this is an area I never wanted to focus on. I never wanted to talk about. But the reality is, right, we're all sexual beings and we steward our sexuality some way, whether we do that intentionally or not. And so kind of create that common language in the marriage too of, right, he's in recovery, you're doing your work. Let's create that common language and give them the resources and the tools to really walk the journey out well.
And I think, just stepping in there, I think one of the most important things to dispel here is that pornography is not just a guy's problem. Yeah. Right? I've heard it said countless times in a Sunday message where the pastor stops and says, now men, this is for you. Women, you don't have to listen to this portion, but if you are looking at pornography, men, et cetera, which excludes the 50 to 70% of women in the room who are statistically struggling with pornography, that they must be extra sinful if they are a woman struggling with pornography. Julie Slattery with Authentic Intimacy says this all the time, that all of us are sexually broken. And I think it's a topic that needs to be addressed in the world. I think some of the interesting stats coming out, research shows that up to 76% of women from the younger years, right, ages 18 to 30, are watching pornography on a regular basis. One of the things that I thought was incredibly interesting about the statistic, though, was that only 3% of women would acknowledge that this is an addiction. And so I think there's just a heightened level of shame attributed to women in this area who are wrestling with pornography and sexuality and masturbation. And is such a needed area for women to find support in. Katie Johnson is our director for our women's program and just meets with women all the time as they process through what does it look like for a woman who is struggling in this space, and how does it affect the family system in such a substantial way. And I think it is something to address. We don't have many men who acknowledge the pain of when their wife is struggling with the addiction, but there's definitely the shame associated with that of what is wrong with me and my sexuality that my wife is choosing to go outside of this relationship. The inadequacy of, am I not enough for my wife to be satisfied with, just with intimacy? That diminished sense. I think men have that sense of being the provider, the protector, even in the form of intimacy. And there's that diminished sense of manhood, of the masculinity in the relationship, the loss of trust and safety in relationship. A lot of these are just cross-correlated between husband and wife. The wife feels a lot of these same things. A lot of men, though, will use this as an excuse to do their own unhealthy behavior, right? So my wife is dissatisfied in the relationship. I'm going to go ahead and go do my own addictive pattern to medicate myself. I think one of the highest things that I see is just also a disassociation with emotions, right? Men are more linear. We compartmentalize thoughts. We move away from the pain of betrayal. And I think that's why we don't hear about it as much. But men, if you're hearing this and you are facing this, I highly encourage you to find that self-care, to step into a community, to step into the process of discovering this process inside of your own self and finding that healing that you need to do, and not, stepping away from that painful experience, because it is difficult for husbands when their wives are struggling in this area.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Before we want you to have the last word and talk to us a little bit more about what you guys offer at 423 Communities. But in the last podcast we did with you alone, Joel, you talked a lot about the youth, and I know our listeners would like to hear about your youth programs. And parents tune up here because yes, there are external influences. The internet, I mean, 8 years old, I think, is the average age now where a child's exposed to pornography. But our children's behaviors and their identity also flows directly out of us. And one of the most insidious things about a pornography addiction, all addiction, but that one in particular, is that it's secret. But don't be deceived that just because you think you're hiding it, that it's not affecting your children, not just your spouse. This is really important that parents perk up. If you've got an issue in this area, whether you can see it or not, it absolutely is affecting your whole family.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think that's one of the things that we see when either a husband or a wife is struggling with this, is that shame that you're carrying is projected into your family system.
Yes.
And a lot of the responses I hear from women that are struggling with this is that it does produce that perfectionism, that control, that anger regarding their own shame, and all of that is cast down into the children. And so they are feeling all of these unregulated emotions and trying to figure out how to process through that process on their own. And so it's wildly needed for the family system to begin doing this work together.
Yeah. And when I do those intake calls with the women, right, that are coming from the betrayed side, a lot of times they're so worried about how their kids will be impacted, but they're also struggling to have the conversation with their spouse. And so what we always say, right, you can't give to your kids what you don't have for yourself, right? You have to be able to have those conversations, be regulated, calm, hearing about what your husband might be going through, what you're going through, your experience, and then take that back when you gain those skills, take those back to your children, right? And hey, I can meet you in this. I won't be mad. You won't get in trouble. Those are such gifts to give to them. But there's work to be done, right, to get to that point. It's not easy.
Before you give us we just got a couple of minutes here. God's design for marriage, family, for the family of Christ is that we're one. And that word one in Scripture means to be mutually indwelling each other with nothing separating. So there, in God's design, there's nothing off limits. There's nothing hidden, nothing secret, nothing, no area, husband, wife, mom, child. There's no, in the body of Christ, there's no area that is off limits. We can't talk about that. Wow. How, and this is really the antithesis, what you're describing, and other addictions, right? In that context really are. So this is a sign. I just heard this in my heart. If you're hiding, if you're isolating, if there's something going on and you feel, whether it's because of shame or guilt or fear or whatever it is, that you cannot confess or share or talk, which is a big part of, I know, the solutions that you guys provide is providing that safe environment where you can open up and let this out. Then pay attention in the next 2 minutes here as Joel and Rachel give some practical next steps for you to address these things, and you'll be glad you did. So give it to us here.
Yes, someone said to us early on in our disclosure, how blessed are those that get found out. And at the time I thought, man, that was the most insensitive, rude thing you could have said to me. But now, 10 years down the recovery journey, it's true, right? We have a whole new life built in Christ, and not in hiddenness, in shame, isolation. Like, the Lord has redeemed all that He's allowed, right? We've experienced the gospel, and it's become sweeter through our journey. And so that's what I would just encourage people of: come into the light. Like, you do not want to go to the end of your life with this hidden. There is so much freedom to be found, but also there's so many more resources now, right? And take those in and give yourself over to the recovery journey, because it will change your whole family. It will change your life. Joel's not the same person that he was, and I am not the same person that I was when disclosure happened.
I'll just say this. I think,
what do they do?
This is kind of next steps for people. The opposite of addiction is not sobriety, it's connection and restored intimacy. And so that's what we provide for people through all of our programs, for men who are struggling, for women who are struggling, for youth, and then for the wives who have been betrayed by their husbands, is a place to connect. And so 423 communities are all across the country, in person or online. These are places connected to a local church, right, where they can come together and work through finding out those issues that are deep-seated, those places of pain, those woundings that have cultivated addiction in their life. And through a community of connection and intimacy, begin rewinding and rebuilding what it means to be healthy and restored inside of community and inside of our family systems. And so all that we do is to restore God's design for healthy intimacy with God and with others, and especially in the context of the family. That's why we love what you do. Whoever wins the family wins the culture, right? And so we are radically and drastically committed to helping restore the family system for husbands, wives, and youth, to bring them back into who God has created them to be in regards to their sexuality.
Man, so needed, so needed. We look forward to having you back again. Listen, if you want to reach them in these programs that can help, 423, the numbers, 423communities.org, or it's Joel at 423communities.org, or Rachel, Rachel, at 423communities.org. Go there, and especially if the Holy Spirit is just nudging you like, hey, it's time. This is what I've been waiting for. Take that step, reach out to them, and start the journey of healing. And any last words from you, babe?
Just get free and be.
Get free in what?
Get free and be.
Get free in.
Love it.
Be who God
Yeah.
says you are, not who your sin says you are.
That's right.
Yes.
Hey, thank you,
Beautiful.
Warneking. So great to have you. Remember this, everybody. Whoever wins the family.
Wins the culture in the end.
We'll see you next time.
Bye.
That wraps up another inspiring episode of Transforming Families with Randy and Leslie. We hope that today's conversation has left you feeling empowered and equipped to take action.
Remember, transforming families begins with transforming ourselves. Let's be intentional, loving, and persevere. You're not alone. We're right here with you.
We believe Proverbs 24:3, wise people are builders. They build families, businesses, and communities. Through intelligence and insight, their enterprises are established and endure.
Thanks for joining us today. We encourage you to stay connected with us on social media, join our email list, and learn more about our resources and classes at the Family School by visiting thefamilyreformationproject.com.
Remember to subscribe, share with your loved ones, and spread the word about transforming families. We'll see you on our next episode. And remember, whoever wins the family wins the culture in the end.